the wave.
Yes.
And I'm going, time out. No more wave. Get the maps out. Let's educate them on our oysters.
It's going to be the greatest reality show in sports next year. I don't know what's going to happen. I keep telling people it's either going to be really great or really bad.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest comes from one of the most iconic restaurant families in New Orleans. Dickie Brennan grew up in the kitchen at Commander's Palace, and then he went on to help shape some of the city's most beloved dining experiences. We're talking Palace Cafe and Dickie Brennan Steakhouse to Bourbon House, Tableau, Pascal's Manali, Acorn, the Commissary Market, Audubon Clubhouse, and so much more. Today we're going to talk about him growing up in New Orleans and in the hospitality world that he finds himself in. A lot of stories behind the local classic dishes. Life on the Bachelor. We're going to get into Dickie waking up every morning to the Mississippi River and the importance of preserving the traditions that really make this city unlike anywhere else in the world. Dickie, welcome to New Orleans.
Oh, thank you. It's so good to be here.
I say that, and I should have said welcome to the Mark Romig Show. But it's sort of like welcome to New Orleans, huh?
Yeah.
All right,
you are Mr. New Orleans.
Let's talk about growing up at Commander's Palace, one of the most iconic restaurants in the city. What did those early years working in the kitchen teach you about food, hospitality, and really the meaning of the rhythm of a restaurant, the importance of that rhythm?
Oh, wow. I feel very fortunate that I had that opportunity. Lived 2 blocks away from my dad's Aunt Ella's restaurant and was hanging out there as a young kid. And as probably around 13, I was doing things, busboys, stuff like that. But around 13, that summer, they let me cook, get in the kitchen, do the hot. And Paul Prudhomme was our chef. And a guy named Stanley Jackson, who went on to be the chef at the Hilton, did the brunch there for years. Stanley was our saucier. So, what Stanley did was make turtle soup, the stocks, gumbos, any of the stuff that would go into sauces, which entailed a lot of prep work. So they wanted me to learn how to use a knife. So instead of any piece of equipment, or there was opportunities to buy diced vegetables, stuff like that, it came in a sack of onions, and I had to peel the onions, and I had to do a certain size dice on them for the gumbo. Then for the turtle soup was different, dicing up bell peppers, all this. And
this was while you were in school?
No, this was the summer. I 2 blocks away. I always went to when I was a senior in high school, I had finished playing sports, and my dad's like, let's go. And I'd go back at nighttime for dinner and go in the kitchen. And it was when we had just started doing bread pudding soufflé.
Yeah.
So I'd show up, and they'd just look at me, and they'd go, get on it. And I had a little KitchenAid mixer and would sit there and just crank out bread pudding soufflés all night long, which they loved me doing that.
Whoa.
Now I look at the setup and the 3-piece, and I'm like, man, life has evolved.
Yeah. Was there a moment as a kid or growing up at Commander's Palace when you realized this isn't just a restaurant, it's much bigger than just a restaurant?
Yeah. The exciting thing was when we bought the restaurant, it was really run down. And so they wanted to evolve it. In fact, my dad had walked over to the house when Mr. Moran passed away to pay his respects to Miss Moran. And she's like, I'm 80, I don't want to run a restaurant. Kids aren't involved. And he says, well, we live in the neighborhood. We run restaurants. If you want, to talk, let's talk. And 30 days later, we own Commanders.
Wow.
Everyone, our accountants, any business advisors all said, stay away from it.
Wow.
Which was crazy.
Yeah.
And then, so, we bought the restaurant in the 60s, and then in the 70s, our family split up. So Dad, Aunt Ella, Uncle John, Aunt Adelaide, Aunt Dottie moved from Brennan's downtown to Commanders. So that's the mid-70s. I'm a teenager, so I'm sitting there watching everything, and they just, each one of them just looked at it, and they didn't want to change an old restaurant for the sake of change, but they wanted to evolve it. And that's what I learned, the difference between changing because someone painted that blue, well, now I got to paint it blue. No, but you have to evolve. And Uncle John's sitting there one day, and they had the room upstairs over the patio courtyard. And he's like, if we put a windows in here, it'd be one hell of a view. Prior to putting the windows in the garden room, I mean, we'd put parties up there, but nobody wanted to go up there. It was just a box. But his vision to put in windows, my God, the garden room, no restaurant had an upstairs dining room that became the popular dining room.
The garden
Everybody
room.
wanted to sit down in the main dining
and
room.
they gaze onto that beautiful oak tree and the patio.
So that room change was an evolution.
Didn't know
but
that
then
story.
we moved the bar into the kitchen because they were trying to renovate the kitchen, and and that was the first. Cause they did it twice, but they always wanted people to stand at the bar and see what's going on in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Instead of nobody knowing what's happening. Again, you had to walk through the kitchen, just. And that's why I'm sitting there as a little kid doing all that prepping, and Paul Prudhomme walks up behind me, kind of, gives me a little goose or whatever, and I'm like, yes, chef, what? And he's like, everybody's looking at you because we had the bar and all these people in there having drinks at lunchtime, waiting for the table. They would drink lunch, and I'm like, what are you talking about? He says, well, you're the owner's son. Everybody's going to watch you. I was like, thanks. I really need the pressure.
A little pressure there.
And he just said, I want you to always realize whatever you're doing, do it the best you can do it. And he was the most. I loved him being my mentor because he just would do stuff like that and wasn't gonna let me stray or whatever. Yeah. So Commanders those years and for my parents to have to start over, leave Brennan's and start over. My God, talk about a person in the right place at the right time to learn and just see it instead of hear about it years later.
Yeah. Talk about Commander's Palace's storied jazz brunch.
Yeah. Well, that was, we left Brennan's in 74. And so Dad and Ella, they had a schedule for years where my dad would work Sunday breakfast at Brennan's and dinner. He worked Sunday. So he would work Friday lunch, and then Uncle John would go cover Friday dinner at Brennan's. Then Aunt Ella worked Saturday, and Dad worked Sundays. Little brother had to go work the Sunday breakfast because that was 1,000 people. It was a monster. And so Aunt Ella liked to do Saturday night and would entertain people on Saturday night. This is all at Brennan's. Well, all of a sudden they moved to Commanders. If 20 people came to Commanders after church for lunch, brunch, that was a good day. So my dad's going from 1,000 people to 20, and because they kept their schedules. And so he's sitting there, he's going, we got to do something, and I'm not doing breakfast, that's Brennan's. And we had taken a trip to Europe. They'd just come up with the Euro pass. And so, literally, Mom and Dad, Laura and I went to 13 countries on a train one summer.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there, it's in London, we're eating breakfast in a hotel, and there was music out in the hallway. And Dad literally gets up, calls Aunt Ella, overseas, and says, I got a good idea. I want to do a jazz brunch. And Aunt Ella said, look, enjoy your trip with your family. When you get home, get it going. And so we're home, and never forget, it was a Saturday, and someone had drawn like the facade of Commanders with the sign. And on it, it said, take the streetcar to the historic Garden District Jazz Brunch, Commander's Palace. And me, Lauren T., a bunch of us got on the streetcar that Saturday, went and passed about all around Jackson Square. And so the next morning, my dad wakes me up. I'm going to go help him get the restaurant open. And we're walking the 2 blocks of the restaurant. He's like, how many people you think we're going to do? And I'm like, Dad, I don't know. I'm 13. And then the next block, he asked me again. And I'm like, I think he's a little nervous. I said, Dad, all I know is that anybody that would literally stop and say, what are you passing out? And we'd tell them, they'd all look at each other and they'd say, we got to go. I said, I don't know, 100 people. And he said, man, that'd be great. And we walked in the door. And we spent a couple of hours just, for some reason, the helium balloons.
Yeah.
From day one, that's what I did the whole morning, was blowing a flipping helium balloons. And then I released them all at the end of brunch, and my dad made me go get them out of all the trees because everybody in the neighborhood was pissed. But so we're sitting there, and I mean, it's almost showtime, and we're looking outside, and there's just people all on the sidewalk. We opened the door. After 100 people came in, we had to close the door because we didn't have the staff.
Wow.
So, I mean, jazz brunch and it was Alvin Acorn. Dad got out. He said, Alvin, I want you to move around. I want you to do a small band to where you could play by the tables and ask them what they want to hear and go through each dining room. So to sit there and see where it's gone and to have been third, again, I'm going to keep telling you, you talk about a lucky kid that was in the right place at the right time to see these things. We had Alvin Acorn, Placis was playing the bass. I mean,
wow.
You talk about an all-star.
Yeah, you saw that evolution. Like you said earlier, you wanted to evolve Commander's Palace, as y'all have done. How do you know when a restaurant concept feels right for New Orleans? And I say that because you've opened so many, and how are they all related? And how do you know that restaurant was going to be right for the city? Whether it's Palace or Acorn or...
Yeah. I think timing has a lot to do with it as what's going on, because you had Commander's Palace and then a whole different generation years later opened Palace Cafe. We wanted to do the same quality. We wanted great service, but we wanted a more relaxed and a better value, for what was going on at the time. So, and, I think location can drive it to an extent. I mean, the steakhouse is in a basement in New Orleans, which is unheard of. There are no windows or whatever, but that creates a great atmosphere for a steakhouse. So just that location and the parking for locals to be able to park. And so I think, it's a combination of things. And but, everything I've tried to do is to focus on what the food, the products, that we can feature that are our local. Everything we've always done, starting at Commanders, was farm to table way before it was fashionable.
Well, let's talk about some of those dishes, some of the iconic dishes that have been created, dishes that are like legendary now as people talk about. Did you have that? Did you have that dish? And so forth. Like crab meat cheesecake.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Oh, that was me and T having a fight. So T had gone to visit her brother, Alex, in Houston. And they were doing this.
Who operates Brennan's in Houston.
Brennan's, and there was a restaurant there doing a salmon cheesecake. So she brings it home. It's in flipping aluminum foil. And I'm like, she's like, you got to try this. You got to try this. I said, well, what is it? She said, salmon cheesecake. It's great. It's great. And I'm like, how old is this thing? When the hell's it been? And she's like,
as soon as she opened up the tinfoil, huh?
But she was like, the only problem is, because it was a high cheesecake and it was like graham cracker crust, salmon cheese. She says they have a hard time getting it hot, because it's too big or whatever. So, and I was like, at the time I was cooking, I was the chef at Palace, and I'm like, if it doesn't swim in the Gulf of Mexico, I'm not putting it on the menu. I'm committed to local seafood. So it's like, I hadn't seen any salmon yet in the Gulf, so I'm like, I'm not doing salmon. She's like, it's great, it's great. And I said, so we kind of parted ways, and so I go in the kitchen, and I was doing this Lindsay tort at a time, which is a small little tart. So I had the perfect pan, and so Barbara Dietz was my dessert chef, baker. And I said, Barbara, I want pecan crust. I don't want graham cracker. I want pecan crust. Let's take our Creole cream cheese. Let's do a custard with some crab meat. Let's bake it off, and so we did that. Took a slice, and I took some Creole Meunière sauce, and I put some more crab meat mushrooms on top of it. And so T was somewhere or whatever, and I sent it to her, and she's like, it's good, but it's not the salmon cheesecake. So she and I typically we do that to each other. We're a month apart, grew up a block away from each other. So I was just like, well, Fongool you, let's run it. And because of she and I coming from totally different directions, I think what we ended up creating was something
beautiful.
that people have enjoyed for so
It's going to
much,
taste even more delicious when I have my next my next
Oh,
dish.
shoot.
All right, pecans
Yeah.
show up a lot.
Yeah.
Tell us about how that became part of your lore and legacy, as opposed to almondine, for instance, almonds.
Yeah. So that was my dad and Paul Prudhomme back in the 70s at Commanders. And so Dad walked to work. It was 2 blocks. And so he walks in one day and he says, Paul, I've never seen an almond tree, but I'm stepping on pecans. He's like, why in the hell don't we do trout pecan instead of trout almondine? And it wasn't much of a conversation. It was like, okay. And it became the classic at Commanders. And I think, we've implemented it in a lot of things, but it's our local nut. Why not use it
That's
instead
great.
of
Another
almonds
evolution.
coming in from somewhere else?
Evolution from almonds to pecans.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's the difference between just being whatever or being committed to evolving something. And, that's always been with my chefs and stuff. I'm like going, look, here are the boundaries. I want you to push them a little bit, but we got a lot to work in, a lot more than most people. I mean, Mouth Mississippi River is the most fertile fish grounds in the world. We can grow year round. There's always something in season. If a soft shell crab's not running, crawfish are coming in. Right. So it's like, I don't want to bring salmon into the restaurant, So,
there you go. You brought up Mississippi River. You wake up every morning looking out of the Mississippi River. Life on the Bachelor, right?
Yeah.
Talk to us about your home and what that's like.
Yeah, no, I guess I've been there about 5 years. There were 12 camps. When they built the levees, put the levees in, the river sand that builds up between the river and the levees called the Bachelor. So years ago, 80 years ago, when they started putting in levees, there were all these settlements on the Bachelors, and basically it was squatters, shanty shacks, and stuff like that. And at some point, the Corps of Engineers we got to protect these levees. So they cleared everybody off of the Bachelors, except for these 12 houses right on Oak Street. Survived. And so I used to ride my bike by them every day for years for exercise in the morning. So I knew they were there, and I was trying to find a house. And my nephew's wife, realtor, calls me and says, Dickie, there's a house there's a broker's day, and if you want, they said you can come with me, and she started describing it. I said, oh, I know exactly where you are. I said, let's go. So I went, walked in, and the couple that owned it, I knew them. And so it was Marcy Schramm. And so I walked through the house, I walk out, and I just said, I really want to buy it. And they said, we want you to buy it. 20 days later, I bought it. And then my phone didn't stop because everybody's going, how in the hell did you get one? I've been trying to get one for years. All right, we're going back to this lucky guy theme. I don't know why. I was in the right place, right time. Mm-hmm. And it is I pinch myself every day because I get to see the sunset in the morning. It's so peaceful. It's like you drove 2 hours down to a fishing camp in the middle of the marsh, and you're right here in the city. So
that's beautiful.
I love it.
You've talked in the past about coastal restoration and recycling, and you're very much involved in that. I particularly want to commend you. Bourbon House was the first restaurant to join the CRCL's Oyster Shell Recycling Program. And I think Pascal's Manali as well is doing that. Yeah. You've recycled more than almost 2 million pounds.
Yeah, it's crazy. And that's one.
Why is it important for you to be involved?
Mark, I grew up with a family that we it was never about staying inside your 4 walls, your business. It was about what's going on with your neighbors, your community, your industry. In the 60s, my dad was on National Restaurant Association. We've all been on Louisiana restaurants. We just grow up in a family where it's about being involved and being given back. But as much as we work with the fishermen and we know that community, our coastal erosion is, we've got to resolve it. Yeah. I was going down to to a fishing camp down Shell Beach, and there was this mound of limestone rock, and they had a front end load of putting it on oyster luggers, and they were taking it out to go build oyster, because of the fresh water, they having to move where they're putting the beds. And I'm like, what? Why in the hell are we using there's no limestone. It's like almond trees. There's no limestone around here. How much is this costing us? I said, and every day my damn oyster shells are going to a landfill. So a woman that worked for me, her husband was with Shell Oil Company, and she was great. And so the problem with recycling was the restaurants couldn't afford to pay for it to be picked up, whatever. So right. Shell did for 5 years where they underwrote a company to come pick up the shells. Then the shells would go downriver, put them in an area because of the protein. You have to let them bleach in the sun for like 8 months or whatever before you can put them back in the water. So once we got them down there, that process took care of. Then it's volunteers that show up, put them in the bags, go out, and and you're watching the marsh disappear. If you put them 10 feet in front of the coastline, you go back a year later, the marsh is gone in the opposite direction and has built a marsh. Beautiful. So I mean, it's just a simple thing to do. It's just people making it happen.
And visitors coming into your restaurants, you want them to understand how they are supporting the culture by you participating in that program.
Yeah, my family's always been big about education. So I mean, we take all our oyster shuckers out on the oyster luggers with these guys, and we have maps so that when the customers are sitting there and they're asking about the oysters, and say, well, they're coming from Area 3, that's good. St. Bernard, and all this different thing, and which is my preference that they kind of do that. I walk in the Bourbon House one afternoon, and they've got everybody sitting around the oyster bar doing the in the stadium when everybody, each section stands
the
up.
wave.
The wave.
Yes.
And I'm going, time out. No more wave. Get the maps out. Let's educate them on our oysters. Shit. Flipping wave.
Before we get to the official New Orleans question, I want to ask you about two of your restaurants. What was the reason to open the commissary, and also commend you on the Josephine and what you've been able to do with that beautiful, speaking of preservation. Talk about those two restaurants, two locations.
Been wanting to do a commissary for years. Just like I said, we like working with farmers, and it's hard for a restaurant to bring in a beautiful pig that's been raised by a local farmer, because you got to break down the whole thing. One, you need space to break it down. Two, it's in a restaurant, maybe 3 items off the pig are going to be on the menu. Mm-hmm. Then you have a lot of byproduct, and it's a lot of waste and stuff. And so, I was always wanting to put us in a facility where we could bring it in and do that, but that in addition to what's going to go to the restaurant to go on the menu, the other parts, the byproduct, would be turned into home meal replacement. Where you come by and you can get the lasagna that has the different cuts of the meat, and so always wanted to do that take home where people can come get food. If they're not going to eat in our restaurant, they can come get our food, take it home, and Very eat good. It that night.
And then Josephine,
we've been doing all this catering when we aligned with Audubon Institute, and someone came to Jordy, my nephew, and said, we're going to do this church. Would you be interested in doing the catering? And it was a natural, because we have everything there, everything in place. And then we just my team got so involved. Now we're the majority owner and developed it, and it's a beautiful space. So
yeah, I've been to a few events there. It's a gorgeous location.
Empty for 40 years.
Right there at Napoleon off of Ferret.
So I'm glad we brought it back to life.
Very
proud
good.
of it.
All right, you ready for the official New Orleans questionnaire?
This one
Are you ready?
Upset my friends.
We'll see. All right, here's your first question. What is the best poor boy?
See, now I'm going to upset some friends. All right. my best poor boy is, as long as it has Leidenheimer bread,
All right, Sandy Wan got his kudos.
I'm going to give him a
And his son.
William. Thank God for William. I love Sandy. So Leidenheimer bread. Then I'm an oyster guy. So I want perfectly fried oysters.
All right.
It's got to be dressed. So I want beautiful chiffonade of some romaine lettuce. I want beautiful tomatoes, some pickles. I'm a mayo guy. And then I'm going to put a little bit of some hot sauce on it. I'm not going to say which one. Damn, my nephew's he's going to kill me.
Who's your nephew?
Pepper Balmer.
We know
The
Pepper.
Balmer one.
We know Pepper, yes.
And now Chris
Pepper sat in that same chair.
Chris is going to be upset.
Our good man, Christy Brown.
Maybe I'll put a little bit of both of them on there. I crave an oyster
Great.
poor boy.
And now I would like to follow up with where would you find that poor boy? And that's where you,
You know, I think every neighborhood in this
Become
city
like the
has a
neutral
place
country.
that I would go to.
every neighborhood. Yeah.
You know, from a Domalisi's to Parkway. My God, everywhere.
Yeah.
Bear. I mean, kill it everywhere.
But, you know, being a chef, you're going to make sure that it's done the way you want it to be done.
Yeah, and it starts with the right bread.
All right. All right, here's one. You have an opportunity to see one New Orleans musical artist, dead or alive, in concert. Who would it be, and where would that be?
I mean, Louis Armstrong,
Okay.
you know.
And where would you want to find Louis playing?
I'd like to see him back at the old Absent House in the 40s when my family, that's where we started. I mean, before we got the restaurant business, we owned the old Absent House.
Okay.
Sweet Emma and Fats Pigeon were our piano players, so I'd love to see both of them there playing that piano
Fantastic.
and listening to Louis.
All right.
Entertain.
What is your favorite New Orleans smell?
Kind of describes, I mean, Mardi Gras kind of has a thing.
We could go to the least favorite smell if you like.
And Mardi Gras kind of has both things.
All right. You go with that.
Mardi Gras is just so unique for us. I mean,
Yeah.
and it could be, you know, a tractor going by with, or the cotton candy or whatever,
Yeah, okay.
or the crew cleaning up after. I mean, boy, you got
right.
all kind of stuff
That-
going on with
That
Mardi
special
Gras.
Mardi Gras
Stuff
smell.
about smells.
All right. Speaking of
I can't
that,
believe I didn't pick a food like gumbo.
well, we'll come back to that. All right. Jazz Fest or Mardi Gras, your favorite?
Well, I'm glad they're different times of the year and I don't have to choose.
Okay. All right, here we go. Saints Mount Rushmore. You know, Mount Rushmore has the presidents. If you were going to do a Saints Mount Rushmore, can you choose 4 players you'd like to see on that?
I missed the first game because I had brought home a bad grade in school. My dad said,
Oh,
well,
so
you're
you
not
didn't
going.
you didn't go to the
But-
L.A. Los Angeles Rams Saints game?
When the guy ran it back,
John
Gilliam.
Right, 1967.
I met John Gilliam years ago in Charleston. He was getting married when and there was that happy hour time, and someone says John Gilliam. I went, hey, Mr. Gilliam, I'm a New Orleanian. I said, actually, I heard on the radio with a babysitter, but I missed your run back. And he was like, Dickie, how many people does Tulane Stadium hold? I said, like 80,000. He said, I've had 100,000 people tell me they saw me. He said, you're the first person to ever say you didn't see me. Out of 80,000.
That's beautiful.
Cute guy.
All right.
Tom Dempsey.
Tom Dempsey.
They had cups, like signature cups, like,
All right.
and me and all my cousins are picking. We hadn't left the game. Everybody thought it was over. We're picking up cups in the state, and all of a sudden he kicks. I've never heard a stadium so loud in my life to this day, and I'm talking LSU Stadium. That was one of the most
You
phenomenal
can claim that you were
moments.
there.
I didn't miss a game after the first one, and he said, "I'm glad I got your grades back up." So I was
Good.
like,
Sorry, you got Tom Dempsey.
so Tom Dempsey, you know, I'm thinking because my dad family was so connected with wanting to help that. So I mean, like a Danny Abramowitz was
Okay.
always around. He was a wild man. I loved him.
Good man.
He's a good man. I love Danny up there. I mean, we got to put Archie up there.
Archie Manning.
So that's
It's three.
Three? Jeez. Drew Brees, I was thinking of, Drew's been so good to this city.
Drew Brees. There you go.
Absolutely.
But, there's probably so many honorable mentions on your.
I was thinking like a Sam Mills.
Sure. All right. Chicken or seafood gumbo?
Seafood gumbo.
Seafood gumbo.
With a crab stock.
With crab stock. All right. What is your favorite New Orleans movie or TV series? Movie?
Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. All right. Neutral ground or sidewalk side?
Sidewalk.
Sidewalk. All right. What's your earliest memory of visiting the French Quarter?
So when, 7, 8, my dad would bring me on occasion down when he'd work Sunday breakfast at Brennan's. And he'd put me at a little two-top table in the corner, and we'd order something, and then he'd go walk, doing his thing, and then when the food came, he'd come sit down and eat with me, and then I'd go get the little cocktail swizzle, because we had that pond with the water that ran all the way down through the carriage, and I'd have those things floating because it would disappear, and he'd get all mad because all I was doing was clogging up his drain or whatever. But spent a lot of time. I mean,
Was your sister Lauren with you?
it would be him and me.
Okay, just like the two guys.
Just I don't know. He'd
Yeah.
take me down there. I guess 2 hours.
All right. Dead or alive, who's the one person you'd like to take to lunch, and where would you take them?
I'd love to do both my grandfathers because I didn't know they both were deceased when I was, my mom's dad was a doctor down in St. Bernard, so I'd have to start down in St. Bernard,
All right.
just get somewhere. And then my grandfather was Irish Channel, so we'd have to drop him off in the Irish Channel, probably have to go by Parasols for a couple of cold ones before we ended our day.
Nice. Very nice. And let's remember their names.
So Nicholas Philip Trist,
Trist.
was my mom's, and then Owen, either Edward or Patrick Brennan was my grandfather.
Very good.
My dad's dad.
Right. All right. Your favorite New Orleans song, either a song by a New Orleans artist or a song about New Orleans.
Do you know what it means to miss New Orleans? And I gotta say that was my dad's favorite song. Whenever he was, all the brunches for all those years, when the band would get going or whatever, and he'd walk into one of the rooms when they were in, they'd hit into it.
That's great. Sort of a theme song.
It was, everybody knew it was his.
Beautiful.
But
What's the one New Orleans food item you can't live without?
damn,
So many.
so many. I wish I would have thought.
You think about it, and we had talked about this earlier, about the seasonal approach to food. I mean, you could even go by the seasons.
So, I mean, I don't want to eat a frozen soft shell crab.
So
When
eat
they're
that
running,
when it's fresh.
There's
go with
nothing
it.
better. Creole tomatoes, when they're coming off the vine ripe in the summer,
Just eat it
there's
like
no
that.
better thing. I eat it like an apple, or I'll make a tomato sandwich with a little mayo, white bread.
White bread.
Oh yeah, you got to do it. And I love trout. I love redfish. Oh, I don't know. It's Mark. It'd be like trying to pick my favorite child.
Yeah. Well, this will be an easier one then. You've been out of town for a while. You're flying in. You got to have a drink. You want to have a drink, something, and you're going to take an Uber and get to that place. Where would you go, and what's that drink you would take?
Probably an old fashioned at Yale College Inn.
Very good. All right, here's your final one. In 5 words or less, why does Dickie Brennan love New Orleans?
Why do I love New Orleans? Because it ain't vanilla.
Very good. Dickie, you ain't vanilla either.
I hope not.
Thank you so much for being with us and for everything that you're doing to extend the traditions and hospitality of New Orleans with your great concepts and your great team, you and Steve Pettis and the entire Brennan family, we deeply appreciate all that you've done and all that you're doing and all that you will do. So come back often, if you would.
Well, can I say this? Thank you, because I can't think of anybody that does it more than what you just said.
Oh, well, you're kind.
That's you.
We got a great team.
Thanks for what you do for this city and everybody.
Well, let's do it together. And
Damn right.
You have
leave it better than we found it.
That's always. We come from good stock, as they say. All right. Thank you very much, Dickie. Thanks for being with us. I would like to introduce a new member of our crew this morning that we have with us, Malachi Williams. Hello, Malachi.
Thank you for having me.
Malachi comes to us from St. Augustine High School. He just graduated. He's going to Southern University. He was student body president for every year that he attended St. Augustine High School. Quite an accomplishment, and we look forward to seeing a lot more of you in the future.
Thank you.
Still ahead on the Mark Romig Show, Wendell and Caroline Brunius stop by for 5 Minutes With. And on the table, brought to you by Blue Runner Foods, Ian McNulty joins us to talk about the New Orleans dining scene. And Fox 8's Madeline Adams is here for Move the Chains. Stay with us. More of the Mark Romig Show is coming up. Okay, y'all, time now for 5 Minutes With, brought to you by New Orleans & Company. You know, few things define New Orleans more than its music. A few places are more iconic than Preservation Hall, right in the heart of the French Quarter. Joining us today are Wendell Brunius and Caroline Brunius. How are y'all doing?
Good,
Doing
thank
great.
you.
Good morning.
I'd love
morning.
to talk with you about jazz tradition and preserving the musical soul of New Orleans.
Sure.
How about that?
That is the soul of New Orleans.
Well, thank you, Wendell.
Yeah.
Let's start with that. You know, for few people around the country who have not been to New Orleans, we
Yep.
say that because we think a lot of people have been here. You know, New Orleans music may not fully hit their minds about why it's so important to us and what does Preservation Hall mean to New Orleans music. Talk to us about the legacy and lore of Preservation
Of course.
Hall.
Well, I mean, the music is such an important part of the culture of New Orleans. You know, our whole total mixed culture became one culture, and then the music, influenced by all the different cultures, became one music, and not necessarily one music in a small box. A very diverse music, but you know it when you hear it, you know. And that's an important part of, like, what I call New Orleans music, because whether you're doing, like, New Orleans traditional jazz or rhythm and blues, rock and roll, rap music is part of it, the brass band music, Mardi Gras music, where you going to get that?
That's right.
You better be in New Orleans.
Tell me, you've been doing this for
A long time.
a long time.
Yes.
How did you get started? And I want you to bring in Caroline, your
Sure.
beautiful partner here, on
Right.
how do y'all work together.
All right. So, my dad was a great trumpet player and went to Juilliard, and he wrote a lot of the music for like Cab Calloway and people like that, Jay McShane and Leon Kellner and all these guys that were at the Blue Room, and my dad wrote a lot of that music for them. So I grew up hearing a lot of music. When I graduated from high school, I thought I was going to be a baseball player. Oh. And I got a little tryout with a great team. That's when I found out I wasn't a great baseball player. But I tried, you know. And then I got more serious about the trumpet. And by the time I came from baseball camp, I had been offered a couple of little scholarships. Those were gone. So I enrolled at Delgado and studied business. Actually, my dad thought I'd get a real job one day, you know. And fat chance of that. I didn't, you know, I've never had a job. Just playing the trumpet. That's my job. That's my passion. That's my whole life.
We love that job.
Yes, indeed. And, you know, delivering the message of New Orleans music and New Orleans culture to the rest of the world, because they think they like things that's been publicized a lot. But, you know, after 15 minutes, because, you know, attention span ain't what it used to be. You know that. After 15 minutes, they're wondering, yeah, well, you know, I wonder what's for dinner, you know, at the Jones's house, you know, stuff like that. Whereas in a New Orleans music concert, you're part of the band almost. Yeah. You know, because we want you to participate. And it's a thrill every minute.
Yeah. How did you and Caroline first start working together?
All right. You
Well,
can tell them, baby.
I moved to New Orleans when I received a full 4-year scholarship from University of New Orleans to study jazz, and that was year 2000. And I started at the university, and I went out to hear Wendell play again, and contacted him and asked if I could have private lessons in jazz improvisation. And I told him how I came to New Orleans for just music and didn't want a boyfriend and blah, blah. And we were just teacher and student for quite a while, and I learned so extremely much about improvisation and New Orleans jazz and phrasing from Wendell. So grateful. But one day I just knew, and I called him up and I said, I love you with all of my heart, forever will. And we're celebrating 25 years, almost 26 together.
Yep.
Happy anniversary.
Well, thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And I
But
know
the
y'all
whole-
traveled all over the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
I had the fortune of being with you in Washington, D.C.
That's right.
That was so much fun.
For the Thai Friendship
That
Festival.
was unbelievable. That was, because it was like two different cultures sharing moments.
Yes.
And that was wonderful. And we played a lot of the King's music.
That was
You
so
know,
fun.
That's right. The former
Yeah.
king of
Yeah.
Thailand wrote jazz music.
Yes, he
and
did.
You played a number
Yeah,
of
he
his
played
selections.
clarinet,
And
he played
as
trumpet.
well.
Yeah, and was a wonderful man.
Now, you have a huge responsibility at Preservation Hall
Yeah.
as musical director.
Yeah.
What responsibilities do you feel like you have to preserve the traditional jazz, but also incorporate it into what's coming into the streets now?
Of course. It's very important to incorporate younger people to the music because they're the future. I'm 71 now. We don't know. So even though I'm still at pretty high quality, it's important to get younger people at least witnessing what I do and what Freddie Alonso does, Richard Moten, Lars, and, a lot of the older musicians. It's very important for them to come and witness that to see how that is, because I did that with Percy Humphrey, with Kit Thomas. I was working at Maison Bourbon, and I was parked across the street from Preservation Hall. This is 1978. And I was 22 years old, 23 maybe. And I was walking to my car, and I wonder what those old guys are doing at Preservation Hall. So I went in, Janie let me in, and I went in there, and they didn't have a trumpet player. And I knew all of these guys because I grew up in a musical family. And so, y'all need a trumpet player? Oh, no, man, we don't let the people sit in here. I'm not sitting in, I'm coming to play. So me with my ballsy self got up there, went to, sat in. And on the second song, come to find out, Kid Thomas, the real trumpet player, was in the back having a sandwich. And he came in and he opened those two doors by Preservation Hall. And I was like, oh, shucks.
I've been found.
Yeah, yes. And then he said one thing which was great. He said, get him a chair. He stuttered, get him a chair. Sit him next to me. So I sat there for the next 4 years next to Kid Thomas. And like before that, I had a couple of years before that, Papa French in the original Tuxedo Jazz Band. He called my daddy for a gig. And my daddy, oh man, Papa, I can't come, I'm sick. I'll send my son. And he thought he was going to send my brother John, who was already a great established trumpet player.
Yeah.
And here I show up with my big, hair and, my best Walmart suit, stuff like that. And Papa says, man, who are you? I said, well, I'm Picky's son, man. He said, oh, man, we thought he was going to send John. Well, that you could imagine what that does for your self-esteem.
Yeah.
But then he said, I tell you what, you're my band leader tonight. Whatever you play, that's what we're going to play. And I'll call a tune every now and then, but you lead the band tonight. He didn't say you got the most limited repertoire here. He just said, because a chain is as strong as its weakest link. Yeah. And that gave me confidence. And, I called my cousin the next morning, Harold Dejan.
Yes.
And I said, hey, Duke, I said, you got some books I could learn some tunes out of? And he said, yeah, darling, I'll come. So he came there with two volumes of books and a pot of squirrel gumbo. You see, you got some work to do, man. So I ate that squirrel gumbo and transcribed both those books by hand. We didn't have the app back then, you know. You had to do it by hand. And anyway, and because of that, today I probably know more songs and words than most anybody. And not by accident, but by paying my own dues.
That's amazing. You know, you mentioned your brother, you mentioned your dad.
Yeah.
What does it mean to you to carry on the legacy as a
Oh,
family?
man, it's everything. It's everything because we eat, breathe, and just live for New Orleans music and New Orleans culture. Red beans and rice, and I like butter beans. You know, they're just gumbo, crayfish etouffee, you know, shrimp, all of this stuff. That's what we live for. And I've gotten her to, you know, to get that same value system now.
Dynamic duo, is
The
that what it's
dynamic duo.
You know,
Yes.
celebrities are popping in and out of Preservation Hall all the time.
Yes.
What's it like? What was it like this past Jazz Fest? I mean,
Oh, it was
and
amazing.
who have you seen over the
yeah,
years?
it was amazing. I mean, because we have this preserves, you know, after the Preservation Hall closes. So, I mean, in the past, we've had like Robert Plant and all of these kind of people that come there, and they want to play a little bit with us. We want to play a little bit with them. So we find a happy medium and just coexist that way. And it works. It just works because music is the international language.
Yeah, Teddy Swims apparently played this past
Of course.
Preservation
Oh,
Hall
man,
Jazz Fest.
And when I'm not playing, you know, because you got to schedule everybody, try and get everybody playing so everybody gets seen and
Right.
gets heard. I'm still there, just like, wow, you know, hanging out, just making sure things are going okay. I can grab my horn and jump in if I want to.
Yeah.
You know,
Caroline, what was your first impression and first visit to Preservation Hall? What was that like, the first time you walked in?
Oh, it was so cool. It had been my dream to come to Preservation Hall for so many years. So let me back up to way back in Sweden when I was a kid. When I was 6 years old, I started to play clarinet with the most amazing clarinet player in Sweden. He's got the best clarinet sound I ever heard on or off a record. His name is Sigge Olsson. And he took me under the wing and started playing when my mom took me to the local music school and just taught me so much. He, a couple of months ago, he joined the Angels Above, 96 years old, and I just so grateful.
Wow.
And when I was 10, my mom started a traditional jazz band together with my stepdad, and they were not musicians. So I played the clarinet, my brother the trumpet, my best friend the trombone, and then the parents formed the rhythm section. My mom started to play the bass, and my dad the drums and so on. And we're the Dixieland Kids, and we started touring. First, we read New Orleans jazz arrangement, and started touring different countries in Europe. And so I started to take out solos from different records and start to dip your feet into improvisation and so on. But pretty soon, my walls were covered with pictures of New Orleans, Preservation Hall, Louis Armstrong, and I thought one day I get to come to New Orleans and play. So when I was 14 years old, my amazing grandparents, Mats and Margaret Bergstrom, they were just angels on earth, now in heaven. And they fixed this concert at a little jazz club in Stockholm, in Old City Stockholm, called Stampen. And this date had been moved lots of times, and I think it was August 1st eventually. This very night, there was a couple from New Orleans named Carol and Cy Frome, who were not musicians, came there and told the taxi driver, look, we just miss our music. Is there anywhere we could go? So this taxi driver took them to where we were playing. And long story short, they invited me to come to New Orleans after hearing me play, and my grandparents brought me here on their invitation. So here I was 15 years old, like just living the dream. And I was going to get to play one time with one of my idols, the great Jack Mayo on clarinet. And then we're going to do all the fun tourist stuff. But then Freddie Lonzo heard me play and invited me to the next place. And he turned out like 23, 24 times. So somewhere there's a picture with me playing with Wendell's band at Preservation Hall, 15 years old. So I was just walking on clouds and dreaming to come back, and came back when I was 17. So that was my first time at Preservation Hall.
What a great memory you had there.
It was just amazing.
You know, you mentioned that you're visiting New Orleans for the first time. You see live music at Preservation Hall.
Yeah.
Why is that such an important part of anyone's visit to the city of New Orleans?
It's just magical. When you come in there, it truly, and every time I did a podcast with the Swedish Embassy recently, and they said, man, you feel like, you give the impression like you just started like today. but it's this magic feeling. You come in there and it's just music, and it gets this magic between the band and the audience. And since 4.5 years ago, I've been so blessed to play with Wendell's and the Preservation Hall All-Stars at Thursday night.
Yeah.
It is such a pride for me and just so much fun, and it's just magic in there.
Yeah.
You know what's another thing is that there's still the spirit of the older guys, Kid Thomas, Willie Humphrey, Saeed Frazier, and all of these old guys that were there when I first went there. And it's just like, whoa, man. And the building hasn't changed. You know, it was remodeled in, I think, 1718 or something like way back then, and it hasn't changed yet.
Well, you know, it's important to look at those younger musicians coming up to New Orleans, coming up through New Orleans right now. And I see some excitement in your eyes about what you're seeing with this next generation. To talk to us about what's coming up.
Well, you know, they've got the energy, the chops, the stuff like that. And that's, when I was younger and started playing, I had more chops than Kid Thomas and Percy Humphrey, of course. But I listened to those guys. Man, I sat there, you know, they were my idols. And you know, so I don't see that so much. People observing the older guys and imitating them. You know, they will copy one solo from me, one solo from, say, Leroy Jones or something, and they think they're ready. And because they've got a publicist and stuff like that, I'm like, man, you got to get some tunes together, bro, and learn form and, you know, learn to entertain rather than, hey, bro, look at me, look at me. You know, and this is the only little thing that I see that I'm like, hey, man.
But your mentoring is important now for them to hear that from you, so that they, you know, they all think they can rule the world now, but they need to pay their dues, so to speak.
Of course.
And
if they don't, you're talking about a 3-year career. You know what I mean? Because when you're young and cute, that's great. But then when you get old and ugly like me, that's something different.
That's great.
And, you know, I've been mentoring people way back, like Nicholas Payton. My nephew is Mark Bro, who plays with Harry Connick's band.
Yeah.
Oh, Jeremy Davenport, all of these guys walked in my footsteps. And, man, I'm so proud of these guys. And I'm thinking, that's what I want for these younger people to get to their level. Because, you know, I mean, those guys are operating at a pretty high level. Mm-hmm. Kevin Lewis and all these kind of guys, man.
But because I think they listened and they looked at their...
And respected. That's an important thing. They respected what we were doing. And they would watch me. They'd watch Leroy. And, you know, there was a couple of older guys still around then, and they would pay attention to those guys.
That's great.
Yeah.
When y'all sit in your living room and you've got your clarinet and you've got your trumpet, do y'all kind of riff every now and then? Just pick up and
all day long.
Every day.
Like, what is that? What does that sound like?
Oh.
we could give you a little example.
I would love to hear this.
All right, we'll just do like a little simple hymn. What you want, baby?
You want to do a little, just a glass of wine?
Let's do By and By. Because then I could play a little bass line
Very
for
good.
her. All right? So this is an old hymn, because so much of the New Orleans music is an extension of hymns and the blues. And this is one thing I explain to young people, or try to anyway. What is the blues? It's not just 3 chords. If you wake up with a flat tire tomorrow morning, that's a blues, brother.
That's right.
You wake up with a toothache,
That's the
you
blues.
got a blues.
That's right.
So it's just a whole thing that you witness, you know? So
Give us a
anyway,
little selection.
all right, here you go.
So joyful. Thank you so very much. Caroline Brunius, Wendell Brunius. Preservation Hall, thank y'all so very much.
Thank
for
you,
being with
Mark.
us. Y'all are
It's
fantastic.
been wonderful.
You want to
man.
hear a cool detail
What's that?
about Preservation Hall? The legendary Sweet Emma, when my parents were on honeymoon, a year before I was born.
Sweet Emma, the piano player.
They came to Preservation Hall and heard Sweet Emma play. But little did they know they would have a daughter who would dream to play
Isn't
the one
that
day.
fantastic? Well, please give our best to everyone over there.
We surely
to
will.
Charlie Gabriel,
Yes.
Yes.
Ben, Mike,
Yes.
everybody, and thank y'all so much. We love you so much.
Thank
And
you, Mark.
May I add that this was our first concert on the Mark Romig Show.
Well, hey,
Oh, cool. Thanks
don't
for
make it the
calling us.
last.
We'll make it.
Don't make it the last.
Ladies and gentlemen, Wendell, Caroline, thank you so very much.
Thank you,
so
brother.
much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, our next guest is one of the most trusted voices covering the New Orleans dining scene. Ian McNulty has spent years telling the stories of our restaurants, our chefs, the neighborhoods they're in, the traditions, and the people who make this one of the great food cities in the world. With the recent 50 Best bringing global attention to New Orleans, local restaurants and chefs receiving well-deserved recognition, and Restaurant Week happening this week, and then culinary coming up just around the corner, there's no better time to talk about all the great things happening and where the dining scene stands right now. Welcome back, Ian.
Great to be here,
Nice
Mark.
to have you back for the second time.
Yeah, thanks for having
Love
me back.
it. You're
Terrific.
joining Fletcher Mackel.
I see we passed the audition, so
Yes,
we get
you-
to come back
you're-
again.
People
Sure.
were clamoring for you to be back here to talk because they get hungry when they're listening to you. Let's start with the 50 Best recently hosted the events here in New Orleans.
Well, you hit the nail on the head on the intro with saying the world-class dining, New Orleans, global attention. I mean, those are the ideas behind 50 Best. And for those who maybe are just hearing about it, 50 Best is it's a list that was created many years ago by a media group in the UK to rank restaurants around the world. So world's 50 best restaurants, world's 50 best bars. They've been expanding that with regional lists. And so North America's 50 Best debuted last year. This is the second year they've done it. And they brought the whole show to New Orleans for the big reveal of the 50 best restaurants in North America. And yes, to your point, New Orleans did very well. 3 of the restaurants in that top 50 spot were New Orleans restaurants: Dakar NOLA, Emerald's, and Akamaya, a newcomer on the list. And that is a fantastic achievement for the chefs, the restaurants, the teams behind those 3 places. But the bigger picture is what it means for New Orleans. Having those restaurants on that list does send a message that it's not just, oh, I've heard of New Orleans. You've heard the reputation that it's a great food town. I heard something about gumbo and jambalaya, right? But that it is a dining destination on a par with any of the other culinary capitals of the world, or North America in this case. But one of the things I loved about it was that they had the ceremony here in New Orleans, and that meant that chefs and restaurant people and people kind of in that orbit, people who are courting their business, people who do their marketing, were here in New Orleans. They came here for a week, some of them. The city was filled with private events and dinners and collaborations and pop-ups of all sorts as all of these top chefs from around the continent got together. And some magic happened. These are people who often work on different coasts, different cities, but they got to be together in New Orleans, and they got to experience New Orleans, our hospitality spaces. They were taking over restaurants and whole hotels in some cases. Jack Rose, just across the street here from your studio on St. Charles Avenue, for one night was hosted 7 different chefs for one dinner, all of them cooking together. It was really magnificent. Brian and Emery over there at Jack Rose just did an amazing job hosting. And I kept on hearing from these visiting chefs, I haven't been to New Orleans in so long, or gosh, it's been since Katrina, or for some of the younger ones, I've never been to New Orleans before, and this is really opening my eyes. Because again, for that reputation that New Orleans has worldwide as a food town, that can mean different things in different people's imaginations. And what the reality is in New Orleans, as we're enjoying it as locals and as frequent visitors get, is just how incredibly diverse and innovative the culinary scene has become here. And that's what 50 Best was showing. By having it here in New Orleans, that was the statement beyond the 3 individual restaurants that did well on the list.
Right, because it's bringing attention to New Orleans. They may hear about these restaurants, but they'll come here and they'll experience all these other restaurants and all these other great classics.
That's right. So I loved it for people to think of New Orleans in that way, to learn of New Orleans in that way. but also to position New Orleans as a place where culinary leaders, leading voices in American cuisine gather, as they do, and as they will continue to do for future events.
With those 3 restaurants on the 50 best, I mean, you've got Senegalese, you've got Mexican, and of course, typical what we'll call New Orleans fare, which is Emerald's, but it covers more than that. But he's based here, and has been here for a long time. What does that do to reflect the diversity of the offerings in New Orleans, and what does it say about what's here, particularly since after Katrina?
Oh, Mark, I think there was a time when New Orleans was wonderfully itself, but really not going anywhere, and it was beautiful but stagnant. It really was. It was the traditions were set, and that was it. And what we've seen happen over the last 2 decades is really new generations, new experiences, new influences making their mark and becoming part of New Orleans food. Great example of that, beyond the 3 you listed, is Vietnamese food in general. That's become comfort food in New Orleans because the Vietnamese community here is so well established and so passionate about food.
Same thing about Thai food, right?
Exactly. Right. That's a great point.
We had the chef from Good Catch on, and you know how many people are just now, Thai has become one of their go-to cuisines.
Of course. And that's because New Orleans people are foodies. They have a food culture here, being raised on gumbo and po' boys and red beans and rice and these food traditions, and putting food having an important role in family life, in social life, in civic life, frankly, the way that New Orleans does with food. That means you have a population here, an audience with a developed palate who care about food, who are passionate about it, and who pursue flavor and traditions and great stories like that beyond the Creole standards, beyond the Cajun and Creole standards of this region. And so that makes New Orleans a great place for to explore food beyond that, because there's an audience here that pursues it, they're interested in it, they give it time, and hence you've got a great Vietnamese food scene. We have a robust sushi scene here because people in New Orleans and Louisiana love seafood. Well, that translates over to the sushi bar as well as it does from the oyster bar. And so that's one of the real pleasures of dining around New Orleans, is how rich and diverse the food offerings really are, because we have that base. We have that base of our own culture. And so that makes it, that's the groundwork for a great food town, is that palate and that interest and that passion for it.
Yeah, it really underscores the fact that we are international. We rank up with those other world capital cities that offer similar, diversity in their dining. So,
always has been. And, that was one of the big takeaways from the 50 Best experience in New Orleans, was showing people from around the world and around the continent, really, what New Orleans is now.
Yeah, that's terrific. 50 Best, James Beard, the Michelin Guide, and of course we have got Bocuse d'Or coming later this summer. What is this saying about New Orleans now as being this city that has got all of this recognition coming?
Yeah, well, New Orleans, one of the great things about New Orleans is that it does have its own dining culture. It has its own cuisine, and that's distinct from really anywhere else in America you can think of. I mean, I've been banging the drum on this. Like, New Orleans is not just a city with a lot of good restaurants. It's a city that has its own cuisine, that has its own culture, that has its own traditions around food in a way that you really only see in other sort of regional cuisines around the world. You compare it to the regional cuisines of Europe, Sicily versus Tuscany. This is what New Orleans is, and Louisiana around it. And that is a draw for culinary talent. And the restaurant scene here, supported by all the visitors that we have so many restaurants. They can be so diverse across the ranges because we have an audience for it, because people love coming to New Orleans and they'll come here to eat and drink and experience hospitality. And so that makes New Orleans this incredible incubator of culinary talent. And whether they go off around the world to start their own thing or stay here and further enrich the scene, New Orleans is the cauldron from which it's all coming out. It's the mother sauce.
Yeah. There's so much going on here about raising the talent level, right? You've got a number of programs underway. This has got to help the awareness of why I want to get into the culinary space to begin with as a student, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having Michelin here, for instance, now that Michelin Guide is rating New Orleans restaurants, one of the major upsides of that for the culinary scene writ large is that restaurants are up for Michelin stars, and that is a career goal for a lot of people in the industry, and to not just simply to it's not just the head chef; it's anybody involved in organizations like that, people who now have experienced working in a Michelin star kitchen or a restaurant that has those ambitions, that's pushing towards that. That's a big deal. That's a big deal for recruiting. I mean, that's the majors, right? That's a big deal for recruiting talent from around the country that want to come here, and that's just it keeps the ball rolling.
Yeah. Let's talk about how you go about your work. I mean, I can only imagine what your schedule was like doing 50 Best.
Well, yeah.
If you could share, how often can you eat and sample?
Sure.
But typically, you're covering the restaurant industry and all the things that are happening. What does Ian do on a regular basis?
I try to keep in mind my audience and the way that New Orleans people and frequent visitors to New Orleans and people who keep up with New Orleans, what they want, what they're after. And that's a mix of the high and the low, which is the wonderful thing we love about New Orleans food, because it's not just these top-end restaurants. It's all across the board. It's the everyday neighborhood joint that's so charismatic. It's the takeout counter where you're getting something you can't get anywhere else but New Orleans. And so, in a typical week, Mark, in a typical day, it might start out at a po' boy shop or a soul food joint and then jump over to a star-studded culinary event, just because that's the interest of people who are following New Orleans cuisine. They want to see the richness and the texture of it and pursue it like that.
Yeah.
And so that's how I try to do it. I've changed in the car one or two times.
There's a tuxedo in the trunk, maybe, if you need it.
Right. Yeah, I don't need to wear this to the crawfish boil, but I will need this 2 stops later on down the line. Yeah. But no, it's a joy, really. The thing about my work is that it is work, and I have to meet a deadline, and I have to meet certain editorial standards, and I have a team that I work with, and it's part of a larger news organization, which is what I love. I love being part of something that's bigger than just what I'm doing, but a news organization that's keeping everybody informed and advocating for things. And to be able to bring the food voice into that is a real joy, because it gives people joy. I hear from people all the time that they love seeing the good news. They love seeing the wins for New Orleans. They love seeing, learning about things that maybe had been here for decades that they just didn't know about. It wasn't part of their realm until someone that they trusted brought them in there. It's almost like I'm taking them by the hand and saying, like, hey, sit here, order this. This place is great. You're gonna love it too.
Yeah. You talked about neighborhoods and how our restaurants are really brings our neighborhood alive in many ways, like Commander's in the Garden District, or Parkway right there at the head of Bayou St. John.
Right.
Talk about how that has developed over the years, because I see Dakar is now moving into a new neighborhood.
Oh, sure. Yeah, New Orleans, talk to New Orleans people, as you know, Mark, and often they'll give directions on a restaurant that used to be there or is still there, right? You take a left at Commander's and keep going past the cemetery. But yeah, when I was first getting to know New Orleans, I moved here in 1999, so a couple eras ago. I got to know the city primarily through exploring restaurants and bars and nightclubs, to be honest. It's like, I heard there was a great place. I lived in the Lower Garden District at the time. I heard there was a great place in Mid-City. I'll go over to Mid-City. Well, now I live in Mid-City, so it's funny to think about it that way. But really, that was the way that I explored and got to know New Orleans. And I think that's the wonderful thing about a New Orleans neighborhood restaurant. No matter what part of town you live in, if you live in Metairie or Kenner, the West Bank, Uptown, or you're visiting from down the coast or across the country, a good neighborhood restaurant in New Orleans can make it feel like it's your neighborhood now. It's that sense of welcome, that feeling, that connectedness, because it's such a charismatic
it's like going
New Orleans
home
place.
in many ways, right?
Right. When I walk into Mandina's restaurant, for instance, on Canal Street in Mid-City, I know that there are people there from all over the metro area and all over the country, frankly. You can tell the visitors. This is what New Orleans feels like. And it makes me happy because they're getting a taste of what we love as locals. And that's the feeling of it. But
and they become anchors of those neighborhoods, like Frank Brightson's restaurant, or
absolutely.
Like the Steak Knife over in Lakeview. They help define that neighborhood.
Absolutely. And they can help change them too, and bring things along. Ferret Street is the great example of that uptown. Was really on hard times before Katrina. After Katrina, some visionaries came in, just on their own, private people who decided they saw the potential there, and they turned it into what is today a restaurant row. And you go down, it's one after the other of restaurants and bars and cafes, and there's some turnover. There's always a little churn, a little bit, new things coming and going, but some of them have really grown into neighborhood anchors over the past decade and a half, and it's vibrant. And then you can see that in different parts of town. Carrollton Avenue in Mid Cities, another great.
I think
example.
of Bayou Road as well.
Of course, that's right. Yeah, they're having a real upswing there with, of course, with Addis NOLA being the big one there. It's exploring New Orleans through its restaurants means you're exploring different neighborhoods too.
Back to Dakar. Are they expanding their menu in their move?
They are
what's
expanding
happening?
the concept. So it's actually it's an interesting move. This is, of course, the modern Senegalese tasting menu restaurant. Got started as a pop-up. That's incredible to remember for all the acclaim that it has drawn here to itself and to New Orleans. It started as a pop-up. A guy working on the side, working in the kitchen at Commander's Palace and deciding to do something that was a little closer to his own culinary heritage from back in Senegal. And, convening people for these communal dinners. That's what the first pop-ups were like. And so that's what the restaurant turned into. The first iteration of Dakar was a very elevated, high-end tasting menu restaurant, but in a more communal fashion where there was a seating and the whole dining room is seated at once at 7 o'clock, say, at 8:30, whatever the seating times were. So everyone in the room is having the same courses more or less at the same time and hearing the same stories from the chefs. They have moved from their first location into another one that they're bringing back to life. It's the old Matt and Natty's restaurant for people with long New Orleans food memories, because I know they're out there. It's on it's on Leonidas, but it's really on what New Orleans people will call River Road. It's right by the levee. They're using the similar format, but actually condensing it. Smaller number of tables in the dining room, in fact. Open kitchen. Really making it more of an experience around the same idea. Of course, it's the roots cuisine of Senegal with Chef Serene's culinary journey through American cuisine reflected in the styles and the cooking. But the big change, in addition to the address and slightly smaller dining room, is they've added a patio outside, and for the first time, Dakar NOLA will have a la carte service. So meaning, if you've always wanted to try it, but have never been able to get into the reservations book or the ticket price may be a little out of range, you can drop in and have a dish or two, have a cocktail, be part of the Dakar experience and experience it that way. And I think that's a great move. I think that follows in the line of a number of other restaurants that have done that. Like Emerald's has Emerald's Wine Bar, for instance. It's a good parallel, but on its own course. That is set to debut in July. That second part of it, the patio.
Excited
part.
to get there.
Sure.
This week is Restaurant Week.
Yes,
I know
big deal.
We all have our favorite restaurants, favorite children, as they say. But how would somebody use Restaurant Week to maybe step outside of their comfort zone?
Mark, I come in praise of summertime dining in New Orleans. I think summer, it's long, it's hot, it gets a little slow, and you can't underestimate that it is a challenge for restaurants and businesses of all stripes to manage when the tourism slowdown happens. But one of the ways that people have and industries and restaurants have been able to manage it is with things like Restaurant Week, which sets up these set price deals that are like, I can't afford to stay in. I need to go out and dine out this week as a local or as somebody who drives in from a close market. And to me, summertime dining is peak New Orleans dining for the locals because we have the city to ourselves a little more. It's easier to get into restaurants that were hard to get into. And our own social calendars tend to loosen up a little bit. I find that. People that I was trying to get in touch with and connect with through the holidays, we missed. Then it was Mardi Gras and we saw each other at the parade, but we need more. We need more of a connection. We need to go out to dinner. This is when I throw reservations on the books. I call other people up. I call up another couple. We'll put together a 6-top. We took an 8-top to Mosca's over the weekend, or is it Mosca's? Lisa can sort that out for us. And it's a joy to do this. And you do connect with people. The restaurants are more than accommodating. They're happy to have you. And often, to your point with Restaurant Week, they have deals on the table. So what I do is I always look at the Restaurant Week menus a little bit ahead of time and kind of run a little scouting report on what looks great. And, honestly, not all Restaurant Week deals are created equal, but some really rise to the top. And what I look for are either signature dishes that are kind of real anchors for what this restaurant does, or really particularly good value deals, or something you just haven't had in a while and you can organize a trip and your cravings around that. Pick a part of town. You want to go to the French Quarter, go revisit one of the great Creole Grand Dames and build in a stop at a cocktail bar beforehand. You can do that under one roof at Arno's, for instance, or Antoine's. You can Are you on the hunt for steak? Steak on a value menu. It's all over the place. Dickie Brennan Steakhouse anchors their restaurant week menu with a great steak frites. When the frites are cooked in tallow, which is the beef fat, which makes them so crispy and good. There's Latin American steaks at Brasa. So you can kind of like pick a theme and then dive into the menus that way. Because otherwise, it's about 100 restaurants doing restaurant week, so that's a lot. Nobody can hit all of those.
Let me see, 7 days, 100 restaurants. You could do it.
Yeah, lunch, dinner, a couple brunch specials on there. Start counting on your fingers.
What did you have at Mosca's?
Oh, of course. We had the oysters Mosca, the shrimp Mosca, the chicken a la grande. And so as I list these dishes, just picture the garlic cloves tumbling onto the platters.
Yeah.
The crab salad to start. This is just a standing order, right? The spaghetti bordelaise, which is bordelaise only the way they do it in New Orleans. Nothing close to Bordeaux happening with this bordelaise. Just garlic, parsley, olive oil. And I learned a new trick, and people have been laughing at me because they're like, "That's not new, McNulty," but it was new to me. There's always something new under the sun. You can combine some of these dishes, and I've long known about. You take the oyster bordelaise and you swirl some of the oysters Mosca. So oysters Mosca is sort of a casserole of oysters and just gratin goodness. And you mix that with the pasta, perfection. But the new one was you take some of that garlicky spaghetti and you swirl it in the shrimp juice, the sauce around the shrimp. That's just a perfect bite when it comes back to you on your fork. I know, I didn't invent this, but it was a new revelation for me.
So when you come next time, would you bring that dish with you, please?
Well, you're going to have to talk to Lisa.
The crew will eat it with me. We'll enjoy that. Fantastic. Where's the restaurant scene heading in New Orleans?
Oh, it's doing a beautiful dance right now, Mark, because we talk so much about the innovation, elevating things, raising the bar of things. And Emeril's is a great example of that because that is a New Orleans restaurant. That is like the epitome of the New Orleans restaurant, just raised to that global standard. And you have other chefs who are pursuing a similar standard or in their own expressions based on their own heritage. Acamaya is a Mexican restaurant, and we now have a continentally ranked Mexican restaurant in New Orleans that would have been impossible to think of a couple of years ago. But on the other hand, the other side of that dance is the tradition, is the groundedness of it all. I think I'd say in a day going from a crawfish boil to a high-end restaurant, later today, I'm going to go to a po' boy shop, and I'm probably going to eat that in my car, on the hood of my car. We have the roots of New Orleans food scene is kind of the everyday, everyman food that is only here, right? It's everyday, everyman food if you're in New Orleans. It's highly exotic, almost inaccessible if you're somewhere else. So you come here for that, and when you re-engage with that, whether it's a po' boy, a cup of gumbo, some Yakima takeout from a counter, that's a taste of New Orleans, and that's taking part in New Orleans culture.
Oh, that's exciting. We'll talk more about that when you get back here and see where we're going and how the summer has been.
Absolutely.
Works for you?
Yes, certainly.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's On the Table, sponsored by Blue Runner Foods. We're so happy that Ian was back with us and making us all hungry once again.
I did my job.
Ian. Move the chains. All right, ladies and gentlemen, here we are with our next guest, Madeline Adams with Fox 8. She's a sports reporter. She's covering everything from the Saints to the Pelicans, high school sports, you name it, college sports, of course, coming right up in the season as well. So, Madeline, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's great to have you here. It's great to have the relationship that we have with Fox 8 as well.
Absolutely.
And I got to start with Alvin Kamara. What was that like last week?
What a surprise. Yeah. It was a surprise for a couple of reasons because, number one, Alvin doesn't normally go to these OTA workouts. He normally chooses just to kind of train on his own. They're voluntary OTA workouts. So just to even see Alvin Kamara there in general was a little bit of a surprise. But then I think Kellen Moore was a little surprised too. Just amid all of the, lack of clarity with his future with the Saints. Mickey Loomis told us a couple weeks ago at the Saints Hall of Fame golf tournament that, they're trying to see where Alvin Kamara fits on the Saints roster. And so it's just, just a little bit of lack of clarity, which was not expected this offseason. So to see Alvin show up, him say, hey, there's no bad blood. There's no, beef or anything from his side. He's excited. He talked about how excited he is to play with Travis Etienne and just this loaded Saints offense. So it was very surprising for a couple reasons to see number 41 out on the practice field last week.
I think those of us that saw the story saw the enthusiasm he had in his expression, and he was glad to be back in. And And you brought up Travis Etienne. Tell us about that backfield. I mean, that could be pretty dynamic.
Absolutely. And well, Alvin has talked about too, when he's had somebody to kind of share the load with, whether it's, Mark Ingram or Latavius Murray, that's when Alvin kind of is at his best too, And so, I mean, Travis Etienne obviously, spent a lot of time in Jacksonville with that offense. And so, yeah, it's for the first time in a while, you have two really good lead backs for the Saints offense. And, you've got depth there with Devin Neal, who showed a lot of promise last year, too. Kendre Miller, if he can stay healthy, I think is a really good addition back there, a really good, depth back there. So it's just one small part of an offense that just is loaded heading into 2026. And we saw that. Like, that was the focus for free agency. Obviously, Travis Etienne was probably, one of the first signings, one of the most notable signings on the very first day of free agency. So you could tell, David Edwards, the guard. And so you could just tell there was very much a focus of, all right, we've got our franchise quarterback in Tyler Shough. Let's build around him and make this offense as good as we can. So, that running back room is just a part of a really loaded offense.
Yeah. What have you heard, speaking of Tyler Shough, what have you heard or seen that makes people believe that it's time to make that next year leap?
Yeah, well, I think it's what we saw last year, down the stretch of the season, just the way that, there's a lot of injuries on that offense last year, the last few weeks. And what Tyler Shough was able to do was elevate whoever was around him, playing around him. And so the success that they had down the stretch of last season, I think, gave the front office, gave the fan base a lot of promise with Tyler Shough, and so entering year two, obviously, like, he is the guy. There's no quarterback competition. He knows that he's the guy moving forward. And, we've kind of seen him over these last few weeks of OTAs and, just really this entire off season from on the field and off. He's the leader. Like, he is the leader of this team. There's been a couple leaders that have left, and Demario Davis and Cam Jordan, who's still a free agent. Tyler Shough is the guy. He's the leader of this team, and he's kind of really embraced that. I've heard from so many people, he's just a natural leader. Like, it's not like he's putting on a front.
Yeah.
He's very just much a natural leader. And we've seen that, too, in the community. With everything that he's done this offseason, I feel like we're seeing him doing something different every single day, whether it's a Mardi Gras parade, whether it's out in the community and just the Savannah Bananas. So he's been everywhere. He's done and said everything right, as the leader of this team.
Great. Well, let's talk about Coach Moore, this second year. How do you see that being defined now?
Right. Well, I think him knowing who his quarterback is going to, be huge for him, right? He knows, all right, Tyler Shough's your starter, and you can kind of start building around Tyler Shough and his skill set. And you can kind of open up the playbook, which we saw starting to happen toward the end of last year, knowing that, all right, this is our guy, this is our franchise quarterback. And so, I think that's got to feel a little bit more comfortable for Kellen Moore, knowing that there's no competition. He can work really closely. I know he and Tyler have been, working, just watching film together. Tyler's kind of mentioned that throughout the offseason, just kind of watching film with Kellen Moore. And so even from that standpoint, because obviously Kellen's an offensive guy, he's the offensive play caller. He, former quarterback in the NFL. To just have that confidence, that consistency at the quarterback spot's got to be huge for Kellen Moore. And I think he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable. Obviously, he was a first-year head coach last year. You can kind of see him getting used to that, the spotlight being on him so much more so than when he was an offensive coordinator. So he's getting a little more comfortable in, press conferences. And like I said, I think, now that they have the trust and the belief in their starter, it makes it so much easier for Kellen Moore as a head coach and a play caller.
Yeah, let's focus a little bit on the defense now. What do you see? You've got Coach Staley. Mm-hmm. Tell us what you're anticipating there.
So excited because I think, Brandon Staley had a really good year one with the Saints. And I know we talked about it. It's like, if the Saints' overall record maybe would have been a little bit better, like would Brandon Staley have gotten more attention for some of these head coaching openings? Mm. That's a possibility. So really excited to see, his second year with the Saints. And I think he's got, a good mix of veterans and young guys who showed a lot of potential last year. Obviously I think the leader of the defense is Justin Reed. He's a guy that's from here. He gets it. He understands.
He's a Super Bowl winner.
He is, yeah, a Super Bowl winner with the Kansas City Chiefs. He understands what it takes to have success in this league, and he's had a lot of it in his career. So I think the unquestioned leader of the defense is Justin Reed. But you also bring in a guy like Caden Ellis, who was with the team that shall not be named the last couple years, but he comes back to the team that drafted him to the Saints, and it's just it's good to have a guy like that because while he has mentioned several times like he's not going to replace Demario Davis, it's hard to do that. Demario meant so much to this team and this fan base and this community. He's like, it's not like I'm going to replace Demario or try to come in and be Demario. Caden is very clear about, I'm just coming in to be Caden Ellis. So I think he'll be really good from a leadership standpoint, in the linebacker core. And then, you've got young guys like Quincy Riley and Jonas Sanker, who's getting reps at that star position. And that's a big void to fill after Alontae Taylor's departure. But, Jonas Sanker showed a lot of promise last year. And then along the defensive line, with a guy like Chase Young, who had a really good year last year, hopefully he can build off of that. But yeah, and understandably, a lot of eyes are on the offense just because of, it's so many new pieces, and obviously, with the emergence of Tyler Shuck. But I'm really excited to see what this defense could do. I don't know if they're getting enough credit nationally for what they did last year and what they could be this year.
Yeah,
so.
like they say in the NBA, defense wins.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, very much so. The same story could be played.
Absolutely.
Keep the other team from the end zone.
Right. I mean, you look at the teams that have won over the last couple of years, they've been known for their defense. They can put up points. You look at the Seahawks, they've had such a great defense, this last year. So it's true in every sport, whether it's, Saints, Pelicans, whatever, you can put up points, but you're going to win, with your defense. And defense wins championships. You got to have a good defense.
All right. So Pelican season, we've got a new coach. What are your thoughts right now going into this off season and into the new one?
I think there's a lot of optimism. With Jamal Mosley, I think he gives Pelicans fans a lot of reasons to be optimistic because he's done this before. He's turned around a franchise in the Orlando Magic. They had 21 wins before he went to Orlando, and he took over that team. And within a matter of his third year, they were back in the playoffs, and then they were in the playoffs, 3 consecutive seasons, and went toe-to-toe with the number 1 overall seed, the Detroit Pistons, this past season. So I think there's just a lot of, he understands what it's going to take to come in and kind of turn around a franchise. And, in his introductory press conference, he mentioned like, hey, we're going to build this and it's going to be step by step and we're not going to skip any steps. And so, it's going to be interesting to watch because I think, if this team can stay healthy, I'm really interested to see what they can do with a guy like Jamal Mosley. And we talk about defense. He was very clear in his introductory press conference. He's like, hey, you can ask me about offense, but we're going to win with our defense. And that's what he did in Orlando. They had a top 3 defensive rating 2 of the last 3 seasons. They were always known to just be physical and aggressive and just intense on defense. And, for a guy like Joe Dumars, who played with, the bad boys era of the Detroit Pistons, that he's got to like to hear that from his new head coach. So, it's going to be interesting to see how Jamal Mosley can kind of really ingrain that in this team, that defensive identity. And I think this signals too, the Pelicans aren't interested in a lengthy rebuild. I think hiring a guy who has previous head coaching experience, who's shown, hey, just a couple seasons and he was able to turn around the Magic, they're not interested in a lengthy rebuild. They kind of want to be competitive now. Now, does that mean a top 6 seed in the Western Conference next season? I don't know, because the West is just getting stronger and stronger every year. We saw that with that epic 7-game series between the Thunder and the Spurs. But I think they want to be competitive now. I don't think they want to wait that long to have success again.
Good. Final thoughts on college football. What's your sense about the Kiffin era?
I've said this, and I don't know if it's either gonna be great or it's gonna be, there's no in between with this upcoming season. Just because there's so much riding on this season, there's been so much money invested into that roster. Lane Kiffin, all eyes, and I don't say that lightly, all eyes in the college football world are on Lane Kiffin, just because of how, the departure with Ole Miss, and just the, like I said, the resources that have been pumped in, the money that's been pumped into this roster. playing in the SEC, the college game day already showing up week 1 for that home matchup against Clemson, and, rumors of college game day going to show up again for that game in Oxford. It's going to be the greatest reality show in sports next year. I don't know what's going to happen. I keep telling people it's either going to be really great or really bad, but they're going to have fun. It's going to be an interesting and entertaining season. And just, if I had to guess, I think, they're going to have a good season just because of all the talent on that roster. Now, it's got to come together. On paper, it's a really good roster and it's a really good team, but it's got to all come together. But it's going to be interesting to see how that all unfolds. It's going to be entertaining.
And add to that, Coach Ogeron.
Absolutely. I mean, if there was any worries that it wasn't going to be entertaining before, adding Coach O to a staff.
Go Tigers.
Yes, makes it incredible. And he's another guy that just gets it. He understands what LSU football means to Louisiana and won a national championship. Last coach to lead him to a national championship.
And you saw LSU New Orleans has just hired Coach Mike Giolando as the athletic director. That was great news for
absolutely
that campus. And then we've got Tulane football, of course.
Yeah, Will Hall, the Will Hall era. Yeah, I'm excited to see. I think the biggest question, right, with the Green Wave is the quarterback spot. If they can figure that out, I know there's a lot of guys competing there. Yeah. And it's, Tulane has had a lot of success at the quarterback spot when you think of Michael Pratt to Darian Mensah, and then obviously with Jake Retzloff, they're able to lead them to the college football playoffs. So they've had a lot of success there recently. Hopefully that continues. Yeah. But I think a lot of their success hinges on the success of the starting quarterback, which can be said for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you coming by.
Thank you
We'd
so
love
much
to
for
have you
having
back
me.
after
Sure.
the training camp starts up and we can see what the action looks like.
Let's do it.
Thanks for
Can't
all the work
wait.
that you're doing with Fox 8.
Thank you, Mark.
for
I
helping,
appreciate it.
Really get people to understand what's happening in sports today. You do a great job with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All
It's so
right.
much fun. So can't wait
great.
for this season.
Thanks a lot. And now for This Week in New Orleans, we're going to go to April Dupree. She's going to tell us all about it. April, take it away.
Thanks so much, Mark. Here's where to eat, drink, and play this week in New Orleans. It's officially New Orleans Restaurant Week, hosted by the Louisiana Restaurant Association Greater New Orleans chapter in partnership with New Orleans & Company. This means over 60 restaurants citywide are offering special menus, set prices, and a very good excuse to finally try that place you've been talking about for months. If you're in the mood for something classic, Brightson's Restaurant is always a strong move. For Creole fare in the French Quarter, Bourbon House is a must. Over in the Warehouse District, Maria's Oyster and Wine Bar bring that easy, coastal, one more glass kind of energy. If you're looking for something a little more playful, Gree in the Irish Channel is always a great pick. Meanwhile, Sui Generis is keeping things creative in that wonderful Bywater way. And if you're looking for extra flavor, Boswell's Jamaican Grill is bringing it to the table. The New Orleans Wine and Food Experience returns this Wednesday through Sunday with wine dinners, labs, tastings, brunches, and other events all over the city. On Friday, Tournament of the Rosés take over the Great Hall at the New Orleans Ernest N. Morial Convention Center with rosés and sparklers from around the world, light bites, a DJ, bubbles, and a cocktail garden. On Saturday, the grand tasting also happens at the Convention Center featuring global wines and food from some of the city's best chefs. You can also check out No-Fee Labs at the New Orleans Marriott Warehouse Arts District Hotel with sessions on wine blending, summer reds, Prosecco, Chardonnay, and more. And for a classic French Quarter wine moment, Antoine's hosts an Opus 1 wine tasting on Thursday. Outside of No-Fee, Tales of the Macabre is still running at the mortuary through the end of June, bringing cocktails, mocktails, storytelling, and haunted New Orleans folklore together in one very unusual night out. New Orleans Pride runs this Friday through Sunday with events across the city. One of our favorite events, the Pride Parade, rolls through the French Quarter on Saturday. The parade starts and ends at Armstrong Park, making its way through the French Quarter in a free, family-friendly celebration for all ages. Expect music, color, community, and a whole lot of joy. And because June weather likes to keep us humble, have a rain plan ready. If the skies open up, seek the most fun shelter inside the Audubon Aquarium, Jam NOLA, Noma in City Park, or one of the city's other indoor spots where you can cool off, dry off, and still make a day of it. For more info on where to eat, drink, and play this week, visit NewOrleans.com. Back to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, April. A lot going on in the city of New Orleans as usual. All right, before we head to Positively New Orleans, we want to have a little talk with our crew about what y'all learned today.
One thing I learned today is when it comes to journalism, accuracy matters more than speed and how fast you're going, to build a trust with your audience as a reporter.
Excellent. Very good. Cal, what you got?
So I learned that this is actually a really good space for a performance, as we saw with Wendell and Caroline there.
Very good. I think having both of them here, and they're just great ambassadors. I saw them perform in Washington, D.C. at the Thai U.S. Friendship Festival a couple of years back, and they captivated the National Mall. It was amazing.
Yeah, I was captivated too just now.
Yeah, fantastic.
Cal, you're going to have your work cut out for you on the sound, so good luck with that one.
And Glenn?
Ian, mixing shrimp Mosca and the pasta over at Mosca's. Seems pretty obvious, but,
And I'm heading there
nice
tonight, by the way.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to Mosca's tonight.
Yes, get it right.
And I learned about life on the Bachelor from Dickie Brennan. He lives where he wakes up in the morning, and he's got the Mississippi River out his back door, so to speak, or his deck. It's got to be fascinating. Just really terrific. So really great lessons today. Thank you guys for participating in this. And now we're going to go to something positively New Orleans. The cruise industry has become one of the great success stories of the modern maritime economy in New Orleans, and for generations this city has been America's gateway to the world through the mighty Mississippi River. Today that legacy continues as thousands of cruise passengers begin and end their journeys right here at the Port of New Orleans, bringing tremendous economic benefits to our city, our region, and the entire state of Louisiana. Every cruise passenger who sails from New Orleans is more than a traveler. They are also a hotel guest, a restaurant customer, a shopper, a visitor to our museums and attractions, and often someone who extends their stay to experience the unique culture that only New Orleans can offer. The result is hundreds of millions of dollars in economic activity that supports local businesses, creates jobs, and generates tax revenue that strengthens our community. The success we are seeing today is no accident. It is the product of strong partnerships and visionary leadership. We are fortunate to have outstanding leadership at the Port of New Orleans, which continues to invest in facilities and infrastructure that makes cruising from New Orleans convenient and attractive. We are equally grateful for the work of New Orleans & Company. Their efforts to market New Orleans around the world help ensure that travelers choose our city not only as a destination, but as their preferred cruise home port. They understand that when tourism grows, opportunities grow for everyone, from hospitality workers and musicians to small business owners and transportation providers. And perhaps the most exciting is the opportunity that still lies ahead. With our strategic location on the Mississippi River, our world-class airport, our unmatched culture, and our reputation for hospitality, New Orleans is uniquely positioned for continued growth in the cruise sector. Additional ships, expanded itineraries, and new partnerships can bring even more visitors and economic impact to our region. As we look to the future, let us celebrate the remarkable progress that has been made while remaining committed to growing this vital industry responsibly and sustainably. The cruise industry is helping write the next chapter in New Orleans' maritime story, one that continues to connect us to the world while strengthening our economy here at home. And that's positively New Orleans. That's our show for this week. Thanks to our incredible guests and to all of you for watching and listening. And a special thanks to our sponsors, Blue Runner Foods, New Orleans & Company, our friends at Visit the North Shore, and their podcast, All the Waves. Go check it out. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell for all of our new videos. We'll see you next week.